students. Welcome to the Checkpoint Online Sessions. I'm Mr. Charles, and this is the fifth lesson of week 7. Please go to your course book, page 133, a story entitled Visitors by Brian Moon. Let's read together. She saw the minibus pass the kitchen window before pulling up on the gravel driveway to the side of the house. It looked like a tradesman van, with metal panels where the windows would normally be, and ladders strapped to the roof racks. But there was no company name on the side of the van, and she felt her stomach tighten at the unfairness of it. Not again, not so soon. The knocking was confident, but not intimidating. Civilized. She opened the door. There were 3 men standing on the porch. They wore clean, neat blue overalls, with official insignia on the pockets. The third man, who had knocked at the door, had a lighter build. He wore a conservative 2-piece suit and was approaching middle age. There was a professional, competent air about him. He looked thoroughly respectable. "Yes?" she asked. "Morning, madame," he replied affably. "This is a robbery." Inside the house, she led them to the lounge. They followed politely, conscious of their movements. "We had a team through only 2 weeks ago," she complained. "Not one of ours, madam. I am afraid we can't cooperate with other firms. Competition, you know, you can always put in a complaint." "Well, where do you want to start?" "We'd like to put you in the picture first," replied the leader, taking a small notebook from his suit pocket. "We like our customers to know they are dealing with professional people, so I'll just run through the basics." He flipped through the alphabetical tabs on the side of the book, opened to a page covered in neat penciled notes and diagrams. He read from it in a confirmatory tone, pausing now and then to check that she understood the details and was happy. "Mrs. Morrison, 42 Wentworth." She nodded. He went on. "Now, we have disconnected your phone at the junction of the corner, and we have a man in the street with a second vehicle just to make sure we won't be surprised by anything unexpected." He gave a small, proud smile. "We disconnected your power on arrival, and of course we'll put it back on as we leave. We know how inconvenient it is to have freezers defrost and so on. The phone, however, is your responsibility as always. We know that your daughter is at work and won't be back until 4 at the earliest. We also know that she usually telephones you at 11, so that it will be," he checked his watch briskly, 2.5 hours before she notices the disconnection. Plenty of time. We have, of course, checked out your deliveries, none of which are due this morning." He paused before flipping the notebook shut. "Yes," she said politely. "You seem very thorough. You must have spent some time checking." 2 weeks is our normal time frame," he said, finally closing the pad. "A bit unfortunate for you, really, that we didn't see the other firm come through. It must have been a little over 2 weeks ago, as that they called." "Yes." The next was asked a little anxiously, as though the wrong answer might introduce a note of unpleasantness. "Did they leave much?" "Oh, no. They took a lot. But we got the insurance people right away. so we've been able to replace most of it. The man was clearly relieved. Oh, good. We hate having to extract a forfeit. What is it at the moment? Windows this month, he replied, signaling to one of the other two men who had been standing patiently by the window. Of course, we break them from the inside, so as not to get glass on the furnishings. Well then, we'd better get to work. Presently, all three men returned to the lounge. Disregarding her for the moment, the leader spoke to his men. Bring the stuff here and we'll make up the inventory as we load it into the van. It'll be more efficient that way. The two accomplices nodded and set to work. A small pile of good began to build near the entrance hall. Television set, DVD recorder, kitchen appliances, some jewelry. It did not take long. He turned to the woman. Will you accompany me on the inspection? We wouldn't entertain claims unless they are notified immediately. Reluctantly, she followed him from room to room, casting a sad glance at the stack of appliances on the floor. She had to admit that it was a very professional job. Except for the goods they had taken, everything was in its place. Despite herself, she had to remark on the fact. Well, we do have standards to maintain, said the man. People still remember the old days. A brick through the window, contents strewn about. Mainly it was kids back then, amateurs. People felt as if their homes had been violated, as if they weren't safe anymore. But things have changed so much since the new legislation. We have to be accredited, audited. It puts the operation on a whole new level. Even so, she replied, I think we'd better off without. Look, you've done a very good job, and you are a right to be proud of it. Or you have a right to be proud of it, but I just don't see that it's really necessary. You're talking about jobs, madam, people's livelihood. The country couldn't handle the unemployment. Nationalizing robbery was the best thing the government could do in the circumstances. It took only a few minutes for them to transfer the whole to the van. They left her with a copy of the list for insurance purposes. She was only halfway through checking it when a car flashed past the window and skidded to a halt on the gravel. Its doors fell open, disgorging a motley collection of young men. There were 4 of them, dirty, unkempt, and hardly into their teens. They pounded up the steps onto the porch and hammered at the door, rattling the frosted glass. She opened the door. The eldest leered at her, grinned, and announced himself. Police, Mrs. Morrison. Understand you've been robbed. Difficult vocabulary and phrases. The gravel is the gravel drive-through is the pebbled drive-through, which means it is full of small stones. To intimidate is to frighten, and both are in the meaning of fear or fright, but intimidating is a stronger vocabulary. Insignia is the badge that people wear on their chests to indicate which company or which school or which party they belong to. The man was of a lighter build. It means he had smaller figure. The air about him is the feeling that they give. Affably, softly. Briskly, quickly, swiftly. Forfeit is the loss. Accomplices accomplices, yeah, they are the partners in crime. Legislation, from legalize, legislation is the collective law, is the law that the government puts out that works for everybody or every citizen. Skid, to slide. Disgorging, to spit out. And in this context, it means to let out. So the car disgorged men. The car didn't really spit out. This is personification. But it let out. It let them out. A motley, a mixture of men, of unkempt men, which means scruffy, which means messy. Scruffy is stronger than messy. Memorize this word. Some words with their opposites in the text. The word conservative, its opposite is radical. Conservative is someone who is hanging to the old fashioned values and closed upon themselves. Radical is the quite opposite, someone who is very outgoing, someone or some ideas or concepts that are very much reluctant to stick to the old values, very new, very much liberated. To forfeit, the opposite is to reward. The opposite of an amateur is a professional. To disgorge, as we said, to spit, the literal meaning, to spit out, the opposite is to swallow. Unkempt, that is messy, the opposite is tidy. How do we value Mrs. Morrison's attitude at the beginning? She feels it is unfair that she should be a target again, only in 2 weeks after the previous robbery. This is in a habit to her to be robbed, but the period between each robbery, it should be a little longer. For her, it's not fair to be robbed in less than 2 weeks twice. And this is all ironic. The whole story is written in irony for different purposes based on our backgrounds of reading. The first irony we can see is that the title visitors are usually invited guests, or at least people who come to one's house with harmless intentions. They're not people coming to hurt you. So the title is ironic. The robbers are not visitors or criminals. Mrs. Morrison's house has been visited only a couple of weeks before, so it really isn't her turn. This is irony again that she has been robbed, but she didn't say I was robbed, she said I was visited. This is again an ironic event. Robbers are wearing uniforms and they identify themselves. What robbery does that? They wear a company's or a robbing company's badge and they knock on your door and say, "Hello, I am X and I'm here to rob you." This is quite ironic. They try to make things easy for the victim, as even suggesting she might wish to make a complaint, to file a complaint to their company. They tell her we will break the glass from the inside to the outside, so no pieces of glass come to the furniture and ruin it. They are very much gentlemen. They tell her that licensing robbery was a necessary way to solve the unemployment problem. The whole story that the text is suggesting is that there was so much unemployment in the country that the state, the government, had to legislate or to legalize, file a legislation to legalize robbery, that it's now something legal. And the insurance companies have to go back and give people their lost items. So it's quite a vicious circle of you getting robbed and then getting compensated, robbed and compensated, and so on. They show her what they have stolen. Again, this is ironic because this is the opposite of expectation versus what happened. The police do not look respectable at all. They have the age and appearance of a gang of thieves. They look messy, unkempt. They look in their teens, and they move about as if a gang of thieves. They already know there has been a robbery because they are working together with the robbers. This is something ironic again because it is now okay. The police know that there has been robbery at her house. They tell her, "We understand you've been robbed," and that is okay for them. They do not act based on that information in order to help the woman. No, they act based on that information to come just tell her, "We know that." That's all. Now go to your workbook, Unit 9, Crime and Law. Let's solve the exercise together. Pages 66 to 68, questions 1, 2, and 3 for today. You may pause the video as for each exercise that we do and try to match what we do and what you have written. For question 1, what part of speech are the following words? Give other words from the same root and their parts of speech. Be careful with spelling, it may change. For example, they ask us for the word defense. It's a noun, and it's up to you how many you can find out of different parts of speech with the same root, that is to defend or defense. Defendant is the person, it is a noun. To defend is a verb, defensive is an adjective, and defensively is an adverb as well. Crime, for example, you should be able to tell that crime is a noun, and other parts of speech are criminal, noun as well, criminal to mean adjective. For example, this was a criminal act. Criminality is a noun. Criminalize is a verb. And recriminate a verb. The whole point of the exercise is for you to take out or to search for parts of speech and for you to memorize the endings of these parts of speeches and what they do denote. For example, you should be able to tell that al at the end of words usually, at most cases, denote an adjective, and then the lity or the ality, when they exist at the end of the word, they denote a noun. And the for example, not all cases the lise, but in most cases as well, they denote a verb. The second word is legal. Legal is an adjective, and other parts of speech include legislation that we took. It is a noun, and in all cases the tion suffix is the noun indication. To legalize, look the ise and the ise again to denote a verb. Legally, ly for most cases is an adverb suffix. Look at friendly, for example. Friendly is an adjective, and lovely is an adjective as well. But in most cases, the ly denotes an adverb. For court, well, court could be a noun and could be a verb. A noun is the place we all know where defendant, judge, jury, and lawyers hang out or actually work. And to court as a verb, it means to love, to be around while loving, and the noun is courtship. Well, courtly is an adverb, courtship is a noun, and courteous is the adjective. Convict could be a noun and could be a verb. When it's a verb, we say convict. When it's a noun, we pronounce it as convict. Convict is the title of Akon, a singer that he claims his street name to be Convict. Conviction is a noun. Look at the tion suffix. Convince is an adverb. The nce is also, or the ince is also a suffix for noun, or for verb, sorry. Convicted is an adjective. and this is a convict. Trial is a noun and a verb. To trial someone, and this is a trial. And other words or other parts of speech include try as a verb and try as a noun. Someone, or this is tried before, this is an adjective, and trying as an adjective as well. Innocent is an adjective, and the nouns or the noun is innocence, and an adverb, for example, innocently. Fine could be a noun, could be an adjective, and a verb. As a noun, this is the fine you pay, for example, as a ticket when you park in the wrong space, when you exceed the speed limit, you get a fine. A fine, that is the ticket that you have to pay in order to not, for example, have your license revoked, not to be arrested, so on. Fine as an adjective, you could just say, I am fine, I am well, to mean I am well. And as a verb, to fine is the person who gives you that ticket, for example, a police officer. So a policeman fined me today, for example, as F-I-N-E-D. The same pronunciation as F-I-N-D, but in the context you could recognize it. Another parts of speech are final as an adjective or a noun, and finally as an adverb. Finalize, look at the L-I-S-E as we said, to mean a verb or a suffix of a verb. And to finish could be a noun and could be a verb as well. To judge and a judge, both could be noun and verb. Judgment is a noun, judgmental is an adjective, judgmentally is an adverb, judged could be an adjective, and judicial as an adjective, which means judicial means it relates to the judge stuff. Counsel could be a noun and could be a verb, to counsel someone, and this is a counsel, where a counselor, that is the noun, belongs to, and where counseling as a noun may be found. Thief is a noun, it is the person who robs, and another noun of this is the action of theft, and thief as a verb, and thievery is the noun. Thief as a verb and thievery as a noun, not really very much used. The nouns used in comparison to thievery is theft, and the verb in comparison to thief is to rob. Both mean the same thing. Question 2. Make the following singular nouns plural and use them in a possessive phrase. For example, prisoner, we need to make it plural possessive with demands. So make prisoner plural, prisons, and then make it possessive of demands, prisoners' demands. Jury and verdicts. Jury, verdicts, jury's verdicts. You put an S, and this changes the Y, since there is a consonant before it, into IES, and then IES, we don't need apostrophe S possessive, we just need an apostrophe, since we already have an S. Witness and statements, witnesses and statements. Again, we already have an S, no need to put apostrophe S, we just put apostrophe. Barrister's speeches, or barrister, sorry, this becomes barrister's speeches. As with witnesses, no need for an apostrophe S, just an S. Plaintiff claims, plaintiff's claims. Finally, defendant, defendant's appeals. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Remember the example of children that we had in a previous lesson. Children is already plural, but it doesn't have an S at the end. So when you need to make it possessive plural, we need an apostrophe S. You could say, for example, children's game. You cannot say children apostrophe game. This is ill grammatical. Now go to question 3. Use apostrophes of possession where necessary in the following sentences. And this is a great practice for your possessive competencies. A. The judge's decision was unanimous. Some sentences, like this one, can have a singular possessive S or plural possessive S, depending on the context of talking. Since this context of this sentence is just this sentence, there's nothing before it or after it, so we have to include both cases. If you have one judge, then it's the judge's apostrophe S decision was unanimous, or you have plural judges, many judges, you would say the judge's just apostrophe, since the plural ends in S, decision was unanimous. B. The robber's getaway vehicle was parked outside the bank's entrance and the street lights showed the number plates clearly. We need the robbers, again, or robbers, singular or plural, getaway vehicle. We may have one robber or multiple robbers, right? Was parked outside the bank's entrance. It could be many banks, but the context does not really suit that robbers rob many banks at the same time. It's just one bank, and the camera is on that bank. We are focusing on that bank. So bank's entrance and the street lights showed the number plates clearly. The street lights is a noun and it is plural, but it does not possess anything after it. After it comes a verb. That's why you should not put an apostrophe here. D. C. The next day's events included the arrest of the bank robbers in their homes, following the witness report of the van's registration number, its make and color. The next day's events included the arrest of the bank robbers in their homes, following the witness's report of the van's registration number, its make and colors. Here, you may include, just make sure the context suits what you are thinking about. Okay, you may include singular or plural. D. I sentence you to 12 months hard labor, said the judge. There was a muttering in the spectators' gallery of the courtroom. I sentence you to 12 months hard labor. Months is plural, and we should put possessive because there's a noun after it. It is possessing it. And said the judge, there was a muttering in the spectators' gallery. It's not just for one spectator. We say the children's playroom. We don't say the child's playroom, for example. So spectators' gallery, it is plural and it needs only apostrophe. E. Sadie's and Simon's cars were the last to arrive. Mary and Omar's were the first. Sadie's and Simon's cars, both are names and we need to make them possess the cars, were the last to arrive. Mary and Omar's was the first. Since you have many cars, you see here where, and there you have one car because you see was, that's why we need one apostrophe. The peoples of all nations were represented in the opening ceremony. The people's spokesperson for the host country gave the first speech. People's actually a word that exists, but it's a little archaic. It's not used that much. You have person, people, and peoples. The definition or the meaning of peoples is that it is a group or groups of people, separate groups of people that believe, behave, belong to different belonging from the other groups. For example, we have three groups of people. Instead of saying groups of people, they say peoples. But it's not a very common word. It's considered not grammatical. It actually is, but it's archaic, as we said. The first one, we don't need an apostrophe for it. The second one, we have something for them to possess. That is the spokesperson. That's why we need an apostrophe. But you may put it as one group, like the one that I've done, or you may put it after the S to say that you have many groups of peoples, as we said, and they have their own spokesperson. For G, the oranges and lemons on offer at the greengrocers were in boxes. They were the produce of the owner's nephew's fruit orchards. The oranges and lemons on offer at the greengrocers were in boxes. This is the greengrocer is a person, and the oranges and lemons cannot exist at a person. They exist at the person's place. And sometimes this is contracted. For example, think of Wendy's. Wendy's is a restaurant, right? And it doesn't say Wendy's restaurant. It just say Wendy's. This apostrophe s embeds after it that we have a word, but it's omitted. You can tell this by the noun itself, that it is a proper noun or the noun of an occupation. You cannot say, for example, where are you? I am at the teacher's, and without apostrophe. This is wrong. You have to put an apostrophe, and you may omit the room after the teacher's and just say I'm at the teacher's, and people will understand that you are at the teacher's room or at the teacher's institute. This, you should know that greengrocer is an occupation, and lemon and oranges cannot be at an occupation. This is the place of this person, but the place is omitted. They were the produce of the owner's nephew's fruit orchard. The owner has a nephew, and the nephew has a fruit orchard. That's why we need double possession here. In the 1990s, the horses' stables in St. James Square were converted into a girls' school, and the headmistress' first task was to think of a name to suit its character. 1990s, as we said previously, it's a common mistake to put an apostrophe here. So in the 1990s, no apostrophe needed. The horses' stables. Horses possess the stables, or they don't own the stables, but they do live there. We do need an apostrophe. And since it's plural, it's after it. St. James Square. This is the square of St. James. The proper act is to put an apostrophe. Some people neglect this and say St. James Square without an apostrophe. But this is actually his square. It's based on his name. That's why we need an apostrophe. And since the noun ends in S, we don't need another S. Horses' stables were converted into a girls' school. This is a plural noun. As we said, we cannot say a child's room. We say children or children's room. And here again, we cannot say a girls' school as in singular. We need it to be plural. And the headmistress's first task. For the headmistress, you may omit the, or you actually may not omit the S, because headmistress is singular. It's not plural. If it's plural, we would say headmistresses with ES at the end again, after the SS. But headmistress is singular. That's why we need an apostrophe S after it for sure. If you just put apostrophe, it's plain wrong. First task, she owns the first task, was to think of a name to suit its character. And this is St. James Square in Britain. The police officer's account of the events that occurred during the demonstration differed from the student's version. It is becoming a little easier, right? Every sentence for you to figure out what to do. The police officer's account. You may put it as singular or plural because you may have many police officers or one. So apostrophe S or S apostrophe only. Account of the events that occurred during demonstration differed from the student's version. Also, you could do, as we say, both plural, apostrophe after the S. It may have been the farmer's truck you saw going over the hill at 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it was the neighbor's truck, which is painted a mixture of blues and greens, so you can easily tell it is theirs. It may have been the farmer's truck. Again, singular, plural, you may put it either ways. You saw going over the hill at 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't think it was the neighbor's truck. The neighbor, you have a singular neighbor. Since it's truck, sorry, you have a singular truck. Not one truck cannot be owned by many neighbors, right? So you have only one group of neighbors, and since it's plural, we need apostrophe after it, which is painted a mixture of blues and greens, so you can easily tell it is theirs. The blues and greens here, I suspect it's a typo of the book because we cannot pluralize colors. This is a mistake. But if it's not a mistake by the book, it could be they mean different shades of the color. Again, this is not for sure, so stick with your rule and consider this to be a mistake because we cannot pluralize colors or adjectives in general. Thank you for watching. We're done for today. Stay safe and keep up the good work.